Thank you, Vijay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for this incredible weekend. As always, I learned so much from these V-COPs. They've become a source of tremendous education for me. So today I thought I would talk to you about stories and our superpower of stories. So let me start sharing my presentation. So I want to begin with the proposition that solving climate change is actually conceptually simple. There is nothing to it. We just have to decide we want to solve it. And let me first get to slideshow mode. Do you see the whole screen or just a little bit of it?
Whole screen now.
Okay, good. So solving climate change is conceptually simple. But climate change itself is actually a symptom of a much larger problem. So when I say talking about solving climate change, I'm really talking about solving all of those. So essentially, you're not dealing with the symptom, but you're dealing with the root cause. And that begins with storytelling. I see a green rectangle. Do you see the entire screen?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
So the theme for V-COP15 is be a vegan superhero. So it's a superhero story, right? So it says we are a superhero for the animals, for sure. They look at us and say, wow, you have so much more power than we do. So you can do things that we can never do, right? The same way, we have to find our own superpower and figure out how are we going to deploy that superpower to achieve what we want. Okay? And our superpower, Yuval Noah Harari said, our superpower, and it belongs to everybody in our species, is the ability to tell stories. Because it is our stories that allow us to coordinate our actions and work together. So we are all here because you believe in the story of a vegan world as soon as possible, and definitely by 2026. So it inspired you as well to come along and say, I want to be part of it. I want to make this happen. So that's a story. And that is our superpower. And that's what differentiates us from every other species. So I want to now present to you a story that I presented in my blog a few weeks ago. It's the hero's journey. It's the hero's marathon journey. By the way, this illustration was done by Kimaya yesterday. So the hero is on a marathon, been running. And currently he's in the heating phase. So going this way, you're heating the planet. And now you're called to make a U-turn. It's a slight U-turn at the end and reach the finish line. But to turn around, you have to start cooling the planet to get to the finish line. And when you get to the finish line, you can stop running. You're done. You're done with this job. And then you just hang around there and enjoy yourself. But there is a temptation along the way. So imagine that you've been running this marathon for so long, and then towards the end, you see that you are far ahead of your competitors. The competitors are coming behind you. They are behind you. You are going to win this marathon. But then you say, hey, I see a McDonald's. I think I want to have a milkshake and some burger and fries. And that's the temptation that's being offered to us. Take a break. Yeah, you don't need to go cool. You just continue eating. But let's take a break. And the danger there is that if you take the detour, you're going to fall off this road and possibly die. So what is the hero going to do? Is he going to overcome temptation and get to the finish line ahead of his competitors? And the competitors are really famine, flood, fire, wildfires, you name it. They're all coming. They're all coming to get you. So this story has its origin in what is happening it has its basis in reality. And I like to tell this story from the perspective of nature, that we are part of nature, and nature gave us control of fire 500,000 years ago. So that's when we started the marathon, 500,000 years ago. Okay, we had control of fire, so we could heat. We could burn things, we can heat the planet. Initially, we were doing minor fires. And we only started doing it in earnest after we got to the current warm period. Okay, so this is the temperature of the Earth in white, and the blue lines are the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. And you can see the temperatures and the carbon dioxide levels correlate with each other. It doesn't necessarily mean they're causative, but it was correlated very well. And 50,000 years ago, we were given partnership with wolves, and that was in the previous ice age. And then when we were given partnership with wolves, we spread out from Africa and went to every part of the world. We became an invasive species everywhere. And then in the current warm period, which is on the right-hand side, which looks exactly like the warm period that happened 3 ice ages ago, something magical. We started burning in earnest, and we started heating up the Earth. So that's when our marathon became a serious endeavor.
Dr. Rao, we can only see to the 100,000 year mark. 600.
That's what I meant. There is a green. Okay, hold on a second.
Yeah, sorry about that. It looked fine the first time.
All right. All right, let me do in a window. Now, do you see the whole thing?
Now we see the whole thing, yes.
Okay, yeah.
There is some gray around the outside, but at least we can see the slide. That's good.
Okay. Yeah, so in the current warm period, you see that the temperature looked exactly like the temperature that happened 3 ice ages ago, except instead of going down to another ice age again, it stayed flat. And if you look closely, that's where our ancestors warmed up the climate by burning down forests, by emitting methane from animals and rice production and so on and so forth. And you can see that in the CO2 levels. It matched what happened 3 ice ages ago until about 6,000 years ago, and then you see it take off. And you see it in the methane levels, which also matched what happened 3 ice ages ago until about 5,000 or 4,000 years ago, and you see it take off. And this is straight from the book by William Rudiman, and that's his hypothesis, the early Anthropocene hypothesis, where he said we have been heating the climate for 10,000 years, thousands of years. So that's his hypothesis. And this is also from his book, where he shows the temperature of the Earth coming out of the ice age 20,000 years ago in red, going over the glaciation threshold about 10,000 years ago. And then it would have come back to another ice age again 5,000 years ago, except it stayed flat. The actual trend is stayed flat. And then once we discovered fossil fuels, it went up by another 1 degree Celsius, so 1.1 degrees Celsius. Okay. So we are now here, and we have gone through almost 500,000 years of this marathon of heating the climate. So 500,000 years of marathon heating the climate. And now we have to make a decision as to whether you continue heating the climate and thereby cause a near-term extinction, or we transform, the greatest transformation in human history, and become a climate harmonizing species of the planet. So we become the thermostat species of the planet. So, and that's the decision point that we are at, where we are facing a McDonald's saying, come this way, or transform and get to this endpoint. Now, the climate change is really just a symptom. Everything that we have been doing for heating has caused the other things to happen as well, not just the climate. So we really have to look at the whole thing. And in the updated climate bathtub model, the climate bathtub model was first issued in 2021 for Glasgow. And now, it's 2023. So the bathtub level has increased to 1,100 liters from 1,000 liters. Still, you have the same 35 liters pouring in from the burning machine and 15 liters per minute pouring in from the killing machine. You still have the same aerosol tank. But now the drain of the bathtub, it used to be 30 liters per minute. I've increased it to 45 liters per minute based on the updated sixth assessment report, where the soil carbon is now 3.77 times the carbon in vegetation. So that increased the capacity of the drain. Okay. So this is the setup. And if you solve this, you will discover that we have maybe 50 minutes or 50 years in real terms, because each minute in this bathtub is like 1 year in real term. It's in real time. So we have 50 years to stabilize the climate. And we can literally reverse climate change and stabilize the climate according to the bathtub model in 50 years. That is like saying that of the 26.2 miles of the marathon, the runner has already done 26.197 miles. He's only got 14 feet to the finish line. Do you think when you're 14 feet from the finish line, you would go and take a McDonald's break? Does it make any sense that we would take a McDonald's break right now in our hero's journey? This is what our ancestors have been working on for 500,000 years. Okay? They are looking to us saying, please take that final step. And what is that final step? It is you have to start cooling. Bring that CO2 level down and actually solve all of our environmental problems. This is really what it is. Solve all of our environmental problems, bring that CO2 level down and stabilize it, stabilize the climate. So we are only 14 feet from the finish line, folks, and this is our generation has to do this. We have to pull this off, because if we don't do it, it's going to be curtains for all generations, future generations. Okay? So we have been in a climate heating phase, which is what I call the ego phase. It's all about me, me, me. Look at me, I am the smartest. We even call ourselves Homo Sapiens Sapiens, the wise hominid. Right? It's about dominating other animals. It's about being above men, above women, and so on. This is the ego phase. The climate healing phase, which is the intermediate between climate heating and climate regulating phase, or climate harmonizing phase. The climate healing phase, we have to serve the animals. You put yourself below. It's shaped like a heart. It's about love. You have to serve the animals. And that's exactly what I see happening in Southern forest. So to me, sadhana forest is an exemplar of how we would live in a climate healing phase, where we are serving the animals, where we're bringing back the ecosystems that we cut and restoring the ecosystems of the planet. And then we can get to the climate regulating phase, the climate harmonizing phase, where you stabilize the climate and keep it there forever. And by that time, the wild animal populations will be back. Okay? Hopefully, we haven't wiped them all out, so we can restore the ecosystems of the planet. And then, once their population stabilize, then we can reach the climate regulating phase. So that's the story that we are in. And in the ego phase, in the climate heating phase, it's based on deception, it's based on domination, death, disease, and destruction. Death for animals, diseases for human beings, and destruction for the planet. If you look at it from a systems angle, it is something that none of us really want. But somehow it's happening, right? And Reinhold Niebuhr wrote a book about this. And I'll show you a quote from that. So it's transitioning from that to honesty, because to me, climate healing is an engineering project. Engineering projects never work if we are deceiving each other. So engineering projects have to be done with integrity and honesty. And I know that from experience. But you can get it done. You can collaborate among thousands. And even in NASA actually did it with millions of engineers for the moon landing project. It has to be with openness, honesty, humility, accepting when you've done something wrong and then fixing it. And looking after the health of the planet, health of our own health, working for our health, happiness and harmony. It's everything that we want. So the transition is not about sacrifice at all. It's really about being true to ourselves, coming home to who we really are. So the intention is the first thing that needs to change. If you look at how we are organized today in our industrial civilization, we are organized to plunder the planet. Our cities are places where we come together in order to figure out how to plunder the planet, how to extract more and more from the planet, how to make money out of that extraction. In the cooling phase, our intention is to heal the planet. And that is the first thing that needs to change. I'm saying the first thing that needs to change is our intention. If we choose to heal the planet instead of plundering the planet, we will figure out the rest. It's not that hard to figure out the rest. Okay? But as soon as we recognize that our intention is to now heal the planet, we'll discover that we are organized incorrectly for that intention. We're currently well organized for how to plunder the planet. There is nothing more to give, right? Nature is saying there's nothing more to give. You're done. So to get to that state where we are saying as a species that we have to change our intention, we have to make our lifestyle changes. If you think about how every individual goes through that process, usually there is something that happens to them. Like look at John's example, John Tanner's example, where something happened to him and then he said, whoa, I need to change my lifestyle. And I'm saying for our species, it is happening right now. You can see the fires. You can see the floods. You can see the impact of the climate change. You can see the strange weather everywhere. Okay? We just got through 31 days of over 110 degrees weather in Phoenix. And it's horrible for people who are on the streets. I mean, I can't even stand there and serve for 2 hours without feeling dehydrated. And we try to do that every Friday. But that's only 2 hours a week that I'm standing out like that. These people are living like that, you know. So we are being given these signals now, saying, are you now desperate enough to contemplate lifestyle changes as a species, as a civilization? I think indigenous people have already, they've already been in alignment. They've already have gone through that U-turn at the end of the marathon. It's the industrial civilization that has to now think about making that U-turn at the end of the marathon. And Dr. Warren Hearn, this is a book that came to my attention a few days ago. A friend of mine sent me an article about it. And he said the only difference between us and a cancer is we can think. And we can decide not to be a cancer. Otherwise, our civilization is behaving exactly like a cancer in a human body. Yeah. And so there are 15 different ways in which he evaluates in this book whether we are a cancer on the planet. And his conclusion is that yes, we are a cancer on the planet. But we do have that choice. We can decide not to be a cancer. So that's the change in intention that needs to happen. Now, I focus on climate change. But I focus on climate change because I've been forced to focus on climate change. There are several planetary boundaries that we have violated. And this is from a paper by Campbell, where he showed the 3 violations that are in red and the several ones that are in yellow. Anything over green is not good. Not good, okay? It's likely that we are exceeding the limits, and therefore it's likely that we could cause all life to die. But if it's red, it means it's definitely not good. And biodiversity loss is the worst of the lot. Biodiversity loss is 100 to 1,000 times the background rate, so which is not good, which means this thing is sticking out, way beyond. This is why it's in shaded red at the end. But if you look at the biodiversity loss, scientists have already agreed that it is caused by animal agriculture. The black dots represent the role of agriculture. And within agriculture, it's mostly animal agriculture. So scientists have already agreed for all of these other planetary boundaries violations, they've already agreed that animal agriculture is the leading cause. So when I first studied this, and as a systems engineer, I look at all of the systems that need to be addressed. I said, well, these other systems are already telling you that you have to address animal agriculture. So my job is done. You have to address animal agriculture, no matter what it is for climate change. They're claiming that for climate change, it is not the leading cause. It's fossil fuels is the leading cause. And that's why these black dots don't go up all the way, right? So from a systems engineering perspective, it doesn't matter whether climate change, it's not the leading cause. You have to anyway address animal agriculture for all the other causes. Unfortunately, it's not engineering that's happening right now. It is storytelling. It's marketing. So the oxygen for the media oxygen is entirely devoted to climate change. They are ignoring all the other planetary boundaries in the media. We hardly ever hear about any of those others. So people are only focused on climate change, and there is a tremendous increase in awareness about climate change that's happening. And there they are framing it as not animal agriculture, but it's fossil fuels. And therefore, let's change the energy infrastructure from fossil fuels to clean energy, and we can solve the problem. That's the story that's being told. But I know that story is only about continuing the current paradigm. It's about continuing being a cancer cell. And that's why it's being framed like that. So then I had to focus on climate change, right? So this is why I called it climate healers when I started in 2007. I wanted to call it planet healers First of all, it was taken, so I couldn't do it. And then I said, okay, climate healers is not taken, I'll take that. And then I realized I have to focus on this anyway, because that's where the oxygen is in the media. But if you look at the whole problem, biosphere has been screaming at us to address animal agriculture, because 52% of all wild animals died between 1970 and 2010. And that result came out in 2014. So the first World Wildlife Fund Living Planet report. Now, if you hear that 52% of some population died, you would immediately jump up and say there is something wrong. We need to solve this problem. That's what I should have done, but I didn't do it at that time, okay? I was looking at it saying, well, when will it get to 100%? I was looking at it as a mathematical problem, figuring out when it will get to 100%. And I calculated that it was going to get 100% by 2026. That was based on matching this to the growth of the economy. And that got confirmed 2 years later in LPR 2016, that it became 58% by 2012. But if you think about it, even the 52% should have been alarming and should have forced me to start, yelling about this. It's like saying 52% of Indians had died between 1970 and 2010. You wouldn't sit there saying, when will it reach 100% of any population of human beings? So why are we so sanguine about the wild animals dying? Why do we think that's normal? Because the killing machine has been normalized. You think it's normal to kill them off. Right? So now, of course, to LPR 2022, it's at 69%. It's still alarming. Okay? So the biodiversity loss itself is tremendously alarming. And yet, when I talk about this, when I talked about it at the Climate Reality Project, people told me, no one cares about biodiversity. You cannot get people to change based on biodiversity loss. You have to focus on climate change. Now, climate, see, biodiversity you can actually calculate because these are all numbers. You can count the number of wild animals. You can tell when they're going to go to zero. And so you can tell that you're in a dire situation. For climate, the tipping points are all unknown, meaning you can estimate where they are. Some of them we know it's between 1 and 2 degrees Celsius. So there are 6 of them that are between 1 and 2 degrees Celsius. And they're shown in these orange circles. And we know we are at 1.2, so we know we may have tripped them. We don't know if we have tripped them or not, but it's nothing definite. I cannot say we have gone beyond a point of no return on the climate based on tipping points. The only way we will know whether we have gone beyond a point of no return on a tipping point is by cooling the climate and then seeing whether these tipping points respond in the right direction. These events respond in the right direction. If you start cooling the climate and the ice sheet grows back, then you haven't gone beyond the point of no return. Right? So the only way we'll know is by actually cooling. Until then, we don't know. No one can make a definitive statement about climate. And Reinhold Niebuhr said, he wrote a book called Moral Man and Immoral Society. So he was studying why a collection of so many moral people tends to be something that has so much injustice in it. And he said evil is to be traced not back to the individual, but to the collective behavior of humanity. Because as humans, we tend to go along. Even though we think it's not right, we tend to go along. Because that's what the majority is doing. So it's about overcoming this tendency of ours to go along. And this is why George Bernard Shaw said, all progress depends upon the unreasonable person or the unreasonable man who refuses to go along, who says that is not right. And I don't care if you throw me in jail, I'll still tell you that it's not right. Now, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine issued this infographic showing that 90% of all healthcare costs, total costs worldwide, come from these 8 risky behaviors. Okay. And Dr. McDougall told me majority of that is poor diet. He said, 70% of that is probably just poor diet. But totally, and this, by the way, is a paper. I mean, they did a correlation analysis to figure out the hospital costs and healthcare visits and so on, and identified these 8 risky behaviors as the cause of 90% of total costs worldwide. Their poor diet is number 1. Physical inactivity is number 2. Smoking is number 3. Lack of health screening. Poor stress management, number 5. Insufficient sleep. Poor standard of care. And excessive alcohol consumption. Now, the reason I bring this up is that in the system that we live in, with the exception of smoking, which happened thanks to the Surgeon General in 1965, with the exception of smoking, all the other risky behaviors are encouraged by our governments. Encouraged and possibly subsidized by our governments, these risky behaviors. And you ask you, why do they do that? Why do they encourage us to have poor diet? Why do they encourage us to have physical inactivity? Lack of health screening. Why do they make health screening part of some insurance that you have to pay for? Why are we so stressed out in the system? Because it is responsible for 90% of the healthcare industry. And our objective in the heating phase is to continue to grow that industry. So the impetus for growth, this is the cancer cell mentality, the cancer analogy. The need for growth is driving us to continue these risky behaviors and to subsidize these risky behaviors. But this gives us the best way to overcome this system. Because these risky behaviors are entirely within our control. I mean, they're making us do it by subsidizing these things, but you can choose not to. And we can actually expose this and say, look, 90% of this is coming from this, and you are actually recommending a poor diet through the USDA, the guidelines. You're actually forcing kids to drink milk in schools. Our children are drinking milk in schools when it's actually making them sick. So stop it, right? So shining a light on this is another way to get this thing to go away, to stop this cancer from growing. So I focused on climate change, and I discovered that actually the story that they're telling us in climate change is also wrong. And animal agriculture is also the leading cause of climate change as well. And that's because there is 3 times as much CO2 on land as in the atmosphere. And on land, we know that 98% of the CO2 on land is in this region where we don't grow animal foods. So the animal food regions only have 2% of the carbon dioxide on land, because there are 3 trillion trees missing on that land. Animal agriculture is the only activity in which we chop down a forest and do not replace it with other trees. We replace it with grass, and that has very low CO2. So half the trees are missing. They say, why can't we restore the CO2 that's in the excess CO2 in the atmosphere down on the ground? This is the first question I asked Al Gore during my training, and he didn't want to answer it. Okay? So I knew that it was a sore subject. that there is something there that I need to poke at. And so I kept poking at it. And so this is how the paper also happened, right? So, and I identified 6 accounting deceptions in the UN IPCC, which, eventually turned out to be just the false accounting of land use versus fossil fuels, using net accounting for land use and gross accounting for fossil fuels. And also the timeline, narrow timeline is still there, right? It's a deception. If you say that CO2 that goes up into the atmosphere and stays there for tens of thousands of years, then you should be counting the CO2 that we emitted 10,000 years ago. So narrowing the timeline from 1750 is a deception in that case. So anyway, these deceptions told me that people know, and yet they're doing it because they're stuck. And I could see the process by which they get stuck, because they recommended a plant-based diet in the 6th assessment report. The scientists recommended a plant-based diet, but the assessment reports are done through a consensus among government bodies. And so we found out that government authorities deleted that recommendation. This is not how you do engineering. You don't say, here is a recommendation, and then somebody deletes it because it's politically incorrect. You will never build anything that actually works. So here is a Shel Silverstein poem that Ray pointed out to me, which I call it the IPCC smart accounting. So it goes, my dad gave me $1 bill because I'm his smartest son. And I swapped it for 2 shiny quarters because 2 is more than 1. Then I took the quarters and traded them to Lou for the 3 dimes. I guess you don't know that 3 is more than 2. Just then along came old blind Bates, and just because he can't see, he gave me 4 nickels for my 3 dimes, and 4 is more than 3. And I took the nickels to Hiram Coombs down to the seed feed store, and the fool gave me 5 pennies for them, and 5 is more than 4. And then I went and showed my dad, and he got red in the cheeks, and he closed his eyes and shook his head, too proud of me to speak. I mean, I was debating whether to include this slide or not, because, but that's the kind of accounting that's going on at the IPCC. When something is counted as net and another thing is counted as gross. Okay? It is so fundamental. It's so fundamental in engineering. So when you take that into account, the paper had said 87%. Animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change, responsible for at least 87% of greenhouse gas emissions on an annual basis. And we can now increase that lower bound to 118%, which really means that if we eliminate animal agriculture and have a plant-based economy, and even if you emit fossil fuels for burning, if you burn fossil fuels for transportation and other purposes, you will still see the planet cooling a little bit at a time. It's only 18% of the emissions, 118% of the emissions, right? It's not like we are pouring a whole bunch of cooling, ice on the planet. No, you're just not adding more every year. You're actually decreasing it a little bit every year. So to do that, you have to put cows before cars. You have to take care of animal agriculture first. And that's exactly what the climate bathtub model is also screaming at us. Take care of the cow before you take care of the car. And the Cinderella principles still apply. All we have to do to solve our problem is to be kind to all life, to kind to each other, kind to all life, take care of each other, feed each other healthy food, and then question all of our traditions and our culture. You really have to reset. So every generation has a responsibility to renew traditions. And so anything that doesn't make sense anymore, you have to throw away. Isn't that what Walt Whitman said? And imagine the world as it should be and act for it. So you want a vegan world, you have to imagine that. I mean, when I do an engineering project, in my mind, the project is done by that time. Okay? And I start with that assumption. And then I say, how do I get there? And I said, this is also the same thing. We have to assume that there is a vegan world by 2026. Then we say, how are we going to act if that's what we are working towards? And replace the 8 risky behaviors with the 8 healthy behaviors. Start with a healthy vegan diet, regular exercise and yoga, conscious breathing instead of smoking is pranayama, meditation and awareness, the 4th one, the regular health checkups, 5. I basically do a blood test every year, make sure that there's nothing going wrong with me. Adequate rest and sleep. It comes from recognizing that you're part of something much larger. You're part of nature. Nature is working through us and helping us. Having a sense of purpose. And I cannot tell you how empowering it was once Kimaya made me promise her a vegan world by 2026. Because I had a purpose at that point, a sense of purpose. And finally, it's contact with nature. Okay? The greatest antidote to alcoholism is contact with nature. Because that alcoholism, excessive alcohol consumption comes from separation from nature, separation from who we really are. And if we all do this, then it'll drive the social change we need. And we need to help each other do this. We need to create community groups that help each other do these 8 steps for the 8 healthy behaviors and hold each other accountable for these 8 healthy behaviors. Finally, it is about building a new system that's based on health, happiness, and harmony. And that requires a new currency system as well, a new money system. It's a new way of accounting for our actions. To change something, you have to build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Okay. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. And then I wanted to have this extra time so that we can just discuss where we go forward, how we go forward from this. What does this evoke in you?
Okay, I'll start. Thank you for that. And thank your granddaughter, Maya, for that wonderful drawing. I loved it. And I think what I want to know is those numbers again from that chart so I can repeat that. If we're only 14 feet away, how many feet back is that we've come already? That's more than a year. I mean, I don't know how you do that, but
yeah, I can tell you it's 26.197 miles. So times 5,280.
okay, thank you. Because that what comes to mind, I'm always inspired by your work, is how can I repeat that? How can I share it with somebody? What parts of it can I share when I can share it? And I love that. I love the drawing. I love that we're so close to the end. I mean, to the finish line, which is not the end, but a big picnic,
Right.
Where we're working to feed each other and the animals. Yeah.
Right. Once you get to the finish line, you just stay there. So that's what that's showing, right? So it's basically you have to keep it there as opposed to going back. So it's 138,320 feet we've already gone, and we have 14 feet left.
Great, great. Thank you.
Go ahead, Alison.
Yeah, so this double accounting, or this two ways of doing the accounting in the IPCC, that's not just going on in the IPCC. I was reading an article this morning about how the ESGs, I think they're called, are being calculated based on values that really don't have anything to do with turning around climate change. They only have to do with creating some kind of a scale which will be acceptable to companies so that they can look good. And for me, what you're presenting about the IPCC is part of a bigger conversation about what's real in terms of objectifying the path forward. And you keep saying that the scientists, that's not their job, that it's the job of the engineers, that the engineers need the scientists' information to be able to make a path forward. So how can we help to create a plan using the engineers, or using a force that's respected in society? I remember scientists signing this, they signed documents saying that they all agreed that that climate change was real and all of that, and that didn't do anything.
Right.
So anyway, I'm looking for a way that we can present or at least put together a plan that people will believe, that will be believable. And it seems like now that we're at a point where climate is an emotional reality for people. They're experiencing the pain of climate, that emotionally, this is a time when people will be more receptive and ready to take another look at what's really going on.
Right. No, I mean, Ken had a great idea that we need to form engineers for the survival of humanity. An organization like that, where it's all volunteer engineers, retired engineers. We all come together and say, how do we solve this problem? Solve the entire system, right? How do you create a system that's about cooling the planet as opposed to heating the planet? Okay? That's about bringing all the planetary boundaries, back under the limits. How do you do that? That is the overall mandate for this engineers for us, for the survival of humanity. And like I said, the moon landing required over 1 million engineers working for NASA. This is beyond moon landing.
Yeah.
This is about reorganizing all of human civilization. And so it's going to require a lot of our efforts. I mean, there's engineers of every stripe need to be involved. I'm a systems engineer, so I look at the overall picture, but then I depend on others to do the work, right? To figure out the details and send me feedback on what works, what doesn't work, how do you modify the models, and so on. To me, science is always it's a negative discipline. It's not a discipline that says, here is the truth. Science basically peels away all the lies around the truth. Okay? So it peels away, so it says, this is not true, this is not true. So it's a negative hypothesis. Any hypothesis you can say, it's not true. But you can never say the hypothesis is true. Okay? Because you may find an instance where the hypothesis is not true, in which case you'll have to change your hypothesis again. So this is why this is how science also makes progress, because it makes progress by removing the untruths. And hopefully what remains is true, right? Engineering takes the best available science and says, if we implement like this, it should do this. So it's a logical. So we take the available science, and we make logical conclusions with that and create products out of it. Okay. And when we do that, we may discover that something in our model is not correct, in which case you have to modify that. So it's all about modeling and testing the models and refining the models. It's a continuous process.
Well, I would like to help to get that job done. I think all of us would be jumping at the bit to be able to help to get that job done. So if we can manifest that, I mean, well, first we have to get clear that we want to create a vegan world by 2026.
Right.
And these engineers should start coming our way. And we need to be watching for them so that we can bring them aboard.
Absolutely. So I was going to announce it, do a press release announcing that we are doing this, and then putting the word out to my network of engineers and recruiting people.
Thank you, Dr. Rao.
Pleasure.
Sailesh, can you make sure you give me a copy of that press release and I'll distribute it in Washington here?
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. Watch.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Rao. Great presentation again. How do you think our movement can move forward if we're not allowing dissent within the organization? As you know, for the Challenger disaster, lots of engineers knew about the O-ring failure, but they were shunned. Their negative opinion was shunned. And I personally feel that at many times when people offer dissent in such movements, they're shunned, be it an alarm against self-promotion or alarm against discordance of actions with the purported values, or even certain things which are probably considered radical, say, for example, that vegans should be anti-natalist or stop having more kids. Then they're shunned down or they are chastised by the leadership, either calling them and chastising them for voicing dissent, or they're being kicked out of the Zoom meeting. So if we have the culture of groupthink, and if we are intolerant of dissent, then how would the social justice movement like veganism move forward?
No, it won't do that. I mean, this is why you need to have a nonviolent communication as the foundation of a social justice movement. And dissenting opinions are welcome, but it should lead to some kind of resolution on what kind of action are we going to take. And you could say, you try this or you try that, because we are in this experimental phase where we are completely changing what we are doing, right? We are coming from a heating enterprise to a cooling enterprise. There are examples of other civilizations that have done that. So we do have examples from our ancestors that we can take. But at the same time, the circumstances are different now, right? So I say to people who are saying, our ancestors did that, but we were still eating buffaloes or whatever, other animals. So you really don't have to go vegan. And I say, look at the situation today. How many buffaloes are left? How much salmon is left? And are they all poisoned? I mean, so it's that kind of evaluation that needs to happen. So that this is why I say everything has to be on the table, and we have to look at it and say, what do we do now, given where we are? And that's what engineering teaches us to do. Go ahead, BJ.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to suggest that we actually could solve this problem of climate change and all those planetary boundaries, and this is not new, it's what we've all talked about, simply by going vegan simply by following the golden rule, do not do unto others what you would have them do unto you. The engineer part is what we need to convince people to start moving in that direction. And because I'm not an engineer, I don't know where all the engineering is needed. I can see there could be some fine points, and we'd need you for numbers and that sort of thing.
Right.
Well, and for inspiration. I mean, I'm not saying we don't need engineers, but I'm saying there's this other path of, if everybody did the max they could do, then it's going to cool. It's going to cool to the best. Now, suppose some engineers could come up with something else like the marine cloud brightening and some other things. But I'm very excited about the engineering idea, but I just wanted to throw that out there too. We don't want to forget that part. And I know you haven't. Thanks.
Yeah, it is. See, again, the current system depends on growth, right? It's a cancerous system, right? It's all about growth. And because of that, when we say go healthy, we start doing the 8 healthy behaviors, 90% of the healthcare industry will collapse. When it will shrink by 90%, right? If it shrinks by 90%, it's no longer a growth industry. Capitalism fails at that point. So this is why I say it's a systemic issue. So which means we have to now create a system in which we are organized not around growth, not around growth in material things, but in a different objective function. The objective function may be cooling the planet, or maybe, looking at the planetary boundaries and ensuring that they are all within limits. So it's a different objective function. Yeah.
Right.
And you need to be creating a system around that objective function and a game around that objective function. Because currently our objective function is all about how much can I grab of the money that's flowing. Yeah. I see that Raj had a great comment on artificial intelligence, AI. And so my views on AI is that if it's an open source AI, then, and because the purpose of an artificial intelligence engine is to ensure consistency in the data. That's what the AI is trying to do. It's removing things that are inconsistent, saying, okay, maybe that's wrong, maybe that's wrong. So, and that's exactly what we do as systems engineers as well. We look for consistency and to figure out where the most likely truth lies. So I would welcome an AI tool that does it for me. And so I can then go just verify that it's correct, as opposed to having to do it myself. And then that gives you a good starting point to test your models out and try new things. So I think AI is a great tool to help us navigate through this morass of data we have. We are swimming in data. There's plenty of data out there, okay? It's just people are putting their own versions of things to market their own stuff. So there are so many versions of the truth out there.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Rao.
Sure. Bhavna?
Thank you so much for your in-depth work around all of this. And thank you so much for putting the convergence together as well, and, sustain continued efforts. And
it's a whole team of people working on the convergence. I'm just a small piece of it.
Yeah. And thank you for holding the vision for all of us, and that is, I'm saying this to everybody as well, because the efforts that everybody is putting in on their individual level. And I feel that's one of the things that can be super helpful is if we hold it collectively, energetically. Even though we are making the efforts on an individual level in however way, in whatever, arena, and however way we are touching lives of people that are coming in contact with us. But if we can hold that larger vision where all of us are doing this and it's already happened, like you said. So if we can hold that as truth today, that it does exist, it already exists, and make it a tangible reality for us, whatever that smells like, tastes like, feels like in our interactions with each other, whatever that looks like, if we are able to do that, I feel we can increase the momentum in ways that are beyond what our minds can think. Because that's where we become very powerful as human beings and moving away from the human doing part of it. Because we are tapping into that universal consciousness that is way bigger than what our personalities and minds can do. And the other suggestion that I have is around the critical mass, reaching the critical mass. How can we reach a critical mass, which will then create a downhill momentum? So a simple question such as, is policy changes, is lawmakers looking at being, targeting or wanting policy changes, or people of faith? Who would be an easier audience, or who would be the ones that can take this message out in a bigger way? That can then create a larger momentum.
Yeah, I am trying everything. I'm throwing it at the religion wall. I'm throwing it at the politics wall. So I look at Mayor Adams and he gives me so much hope, because he's trying to push it through to all the city mayors, to the city governments. And see, you can see from his example how one person can actually make such a big difference, if he gets into the right position. We are going to the Parliament of World Religions, and we are trying to promote this in the Parliament of World Religions, because the most progressive religious leaders are coming there. Okay, so we will see. Someone will pick it up, because I'm convinced, just like you, that we are part of something much, much larger. So this transformation is in the offing. Okay? That this bend, we are going to take it. This bend in the marathon, we are going to take it. Okay, and we are going to reach the end point and stay there. So we are definitely not going to go rushing to the McDonald's and fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
I know that. Okay, I know that. I have total faith in that ever since Kimaya came into my life.
Yeah. And
so, yeah.
And one more thing that I want to add is that in terms of the message, I feel that we have to meet people where they are at. We have to take the time to find out, to know as to what is their reality. Right. What is their, just as you work with the homeless, if we talk about a systems change to a homeless person, it is not going to make any sense to them whatsoever. And similarly to a politician who is, all they're wanting to is to be reelected and power. So I'm, and on an individual level, it applies to maybe our neighbor who we are talking to and wanting to find out, maybe they're facing an addiction problem or something. Then are they ready for that leap into veganism or not? So that's where I feel that it takes a whole another turn if we are able to start. And that means the message would need to change with who we are speaking to as well. We cannot have, I guess, if I can, just to make it more clear, is to have an agenda of ourselves.
Right.
If from a compassionate place, we can go, oh, what is going on in your world? And that can apply to a larger audience. And that can apply to our next door neighbor, whatever that looks like. So,
Right.
yeah.
I also say that I also try to focus on those who are on the wall, or on the fence, or close to the wall, and not worry too much about those who are too far away,
Right.
because it will take them time to come. So, the most important thing we can do as a community is get educated, understand the problem better, understand this framing, understand our solution. The way we are, basically the story we are trying to tell is that there is no one to blame. This is what is meant to happen. You were supposed to go this way, and we are going to turn around because of that, right? So this way, I think we can tell a story that's inviting to everyone. And that's our superpower as a species, and also as climate healers. We have that superpower now, of a story that's inviting to everyone.
Yeah. Thank you so much again. And thank you to everybody, that presented and are making all the efforts on their side to make this possible. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavna. Ken? You have to unmute yourself. You're not able to unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I can hear you.
I've just been consumed with images of surprise. I'm looking for and calling for surprises. Mayor Adams' letter on Monday morning that we heard about was a surprise. And we were going to write to the mayors, and we still are, I think. But now we have a different story. Now it's a whole different, it's got a different leverage to it. That's a type of surprise. And so maybe there are many other ways of surprise that we're not aware of. Like, for instance, 88 billion animals killed a year. Is that right, in the world? Suppose
Land
that
animals
was, yeah, suppose that was 40 billion in 2026. Would that be a huge boost to the climate, if that's sort of a number?
Well, I think you can get it to a point. We see, again, we don't know. We are coming up with lower bounds, so on the land that I'm coming up with bounds based on how much food the animals are eating and things like that. If you actually go there and help the vegetation come back, you can accelerate it considerably. We know that. So we don't
40 billion would be a miracle, right? I mean, that would be awesome.
If you reduce the number of animals killed by half,
yeah. Okay. So what I'm asking for, my decision is to ask for miracles. My decision is to ask for magical events, extraordinary events. I don't think the climate really cares how the numbers get reduced. Whether people stop eating the animals, or whether there's a disease that wipes out animals, or floods, or whatever. But I'm just asking for surprises to assist us in this process, and it will give us more leverage in the process. Because I don't really believe in linear projections. I just don't believe in them. They never happen that way. They always happen. You work really, really hard, and then bang, something happens. Not that you created, but just because of your work and because of your decision, then a break loose happens. So anyway, I wanted to plant the idea of surprises. We should be looking for and asking for and deciding that we want surprises, great big surprises. And we don't know we want to work hard for them. We don't know we don't want to wait a long time for them. We want some big surprises, and we want them now.
But we want to work for them.
Yeah, we're going to work for them. Absolutely, absolutely. From many different angles. Yes.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've seen this so many times. I mean, I've told the story about when I proposed gigabit Ethernet to my colleagues at the IEEE, the Institute for Electrical and Electronic Engineers. They all laughed at me. They said, it's impossible. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Cannot be done. And once it was working, they said, well, of course it can be done. It's like the example is there on the ground at that point.
Yeah.
And so the same, I see it happening here, because people, even, people here, they hear me, but they say, look, really, in 3 years? Will it really happen in 3 years?
Yes.
It's impossible. And that's because people think linearly. We always think linearly.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I'm saying there are so many things that are nonlinear. In fact, we only chronicle the nonlinear events in history. So we've seen nonlinear events happen, because that's what we are noting down and saying that's a chronicle. Right? But ultimately, it's this nonlinearity. This is
Nonlinearity is what is going to happen.
Right.
And we need to ask for it. And we need to ask for it with force and decision and consistency.
Absolutely.
And then work for it. And then work for it. Make the ground ready. Yeah.
Right. Keep at it. I mean, I also used the analogy of the dam right before. The dam. We are punching holes in the dam of denial. And eventually it will flood. It will open up and flood. To me, the whole process is very, very similar to.
But I don't know that it's going to be the dam or smoke that comes from a fire somewhere.
Right. No, I mean the process of the dam
crumbling.
crumbling.
We need to be looking for it. Yep.
Yeah. The process of the dam crumbling. Yeah. Because I mean, I saw in Earthling Ed's book. Earthling Ed wrote a book recently, and in his book he quotes a comedian, an English comedian, who said, I hear this vegan all the time around me, so I suspect they've got something that they're right about something. So it's there in the back of people's minds, Vegan is growing, so maybe that's where the future is. So they're all thinking, when do I jump?
It's natural to us. That's the other thing. We're not inventing something. This is not some new invention. It's natural to us. It's everybody. I mean, there are many, many sources now that are saying, we were built this way. We were created this way to eat plants. So we're not creating something new. We're just awakening something that's there already. Anybody in this room would intentionally hurt an animal. I mean, it's already there. It's already there. We're just making it real.
Absolutely. We're coming home to who we are.
And it'll be surprising how we get there. And just absolutely shockingly surprising how it happens, how it unfolds. Right. And that's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun.
I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you, Ken, as always.
Hi.
Hi, Nancy.
Thanks again. I would love to get the bathtub analogy like the film. So when you have a chance to put that, where I could just put it up on my YouTube channel, if that's possible, and popularize it, because it's beautiful and it makes so much sense. I was wondering about the use of the word we. Like we use the cities to exploit, when I think it's still important to, have a class analysis, that there's an ownership class and a working class, or the rest of us. And that all started from the hoarding and herding societies, that it was taking over more and more land for their cattle, their sheep and their goats. And that whole mentality of expansion, because if you make animals the concept of wealth, that the measure of wealth is how many heads or kappas or capitalism or capital of cattle you have, then you just want more and more cattle and more land. And that this is sort of, I so support everything we're all saying, which kind of links up. And at the same time, it's like that class that owns all the wealth and the means of making more wealth, capitalists, they use violence to keep things as going that way, to extract more wealth from animals, our labor, land. So I think that truth wins in the end, and exposing that whole, their use of violence and killing, 1,100 land defenders in the Amazon, and, just their use of force, their use of wars. They're propagating mass killings, one a day is happening in the US, all that. So I just want to like sort of posit that, and also ask you, how is a city a way of extracting wealth? I always see it as a way of, populations living together with less resources, maybe, I don't know. But the main thing I'm saying is that we, the people, is different than we are taking over the earth. We are extracting wealth.
Well, overall, we are heating. Altogether, we are heating. So we have to accept responsibility for doing that we are all, part of a system that is heating the planet, that is causing the planetary boundaries to be exceeded. Okay, together, collectively, we are doing it. Now, the question is, how do we organize ourselves to stay within the boundaries? And that is an engineering project. And in any engineering team that I have been part of, okay, that has been successful, we always begin by making sure that every engineer feels like he or she belongs in the team. Okay? It's not about violence. It's about making every engineer feel like they are important in the team. They belong in the team. They're contributing something to the overall project, right? And to do that, you have to get money out of the equation. It's the number one thing. You have to get money out of the equation. And no one should be thinking about money. They should be thinking about what they're doing, whether it is the moon landing or, or in this case, the climate healing project. So they should be thinking about that, focusing on that. So, which means their basic needs have to be automatically met. And this is why I say it has to be, healthy food for free, healthy shelter, basic shelter for free. So these basic needs have to be automatically met for human beings. Can we not do that as engineers? Of course we can do that. There's plenty on the planet for us to have healthy food for everyone for free. Right? In a way, I'm going back to the way my ancestors used to do things. That's what I'm proposing as a solution. Now, you could say, I have a better way of doing it. I'm open to hearing it. I'm just saying that we never used to pay for food in India before the colonial system came along. Okay? It's the colonization that made us go and, create monocultures as to pay the taxman, and that forced us to have to barter for food and then eventually trade for food. And that created famines in India. Almost 100 million people died from famines from the 19th century and the 20th century. And it's known, but they say it's natural. It's not natural. It was created from this system. So all those things, you have to say, okay, we have to look at where we are now, and then what do we do going forward? That's all I'm focused on. So there are so many things that happened in the past. There's so many. Every one of us played a role in this heating system, and I'm not. I think it's counterproductive for us to figure out who to blame and what to blame, and so on. They're playing a role. It's a game. It's a game in which everyone is playing a role in the game. Money is a game, in my opinion. The way I frame it, money is a game. It's a game with rules that were bent and made so that people who are owners stay owners. That's how the rules were meant, right? So you said that money game is only for heating the climate. It's not a valid game for cooling the climate.
So you're
So we
thinking
have to figure out a new game. Yeah,
whole systems change.
exactly. Yeah. So a Codes for a Healthy Earth is a good start for what should the objective of the system be. So, but I think it's a very creative period in human history, right? So we have to think about something different, not what ancestors have been doing for 500,000 years. To do something different. And we have all the tools we need to do that. We have the software, we have the AI, so you can start deploying these things for this purpose. But always with feedback so that you know that you are implementing what you think you are implementing. So that comes from modeling and verifying your models and so on. It's a complex engineering project in that sense. But it's also a cultural project. It's also a social project. So it's everything. It's in there. Anyway, it's fun to be alive at this time, in my opinion. Hello, Jim. You're still muted. Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I hate to be a naysayer to all this, but we could just have one big volcano put us into a new, a winter or, a couple of years, and then everything will change. I don't really like that kind of change. But to make more real, heaven's sakes, we've got this nuclear war possibility with Russia. And that doesn't excite me. I don't want to have that kind of change either.
Right.
So, I hear people talking about let's have some change. I really don't want that kind of change, but I really don't see how we're going to change society as quickly. It's an undaunting problem. I really am afraid of it.
Yeah, it's when you look at it with your mind and you say, this is where we are, our mind has a tendency to think linearly. Right? It's really, I started feeling much better about this whole thing when I just let go and say, I'm doing what I know, and I'm going to do the darndest what I know to achieve my objective. Beyond that, it's not in my hands, and I'm just going to let go. And I said, it's in the hands of that little baby who's laughing at me. Okay. So I see Mother Nature as, that Mother Nature to me is that little baby who's absolutely perfect when she was born. So I had the sense of perfection looking at her. So I say that nature is a perfect system design. No human being could have ever designed that. No systems engineer could have ever designed that. Okay. I was in awe of nature when I started looking at it from a systems angle.
Well, our bodies are fantastic how they heal.
Exactly.
It's
Nature has
incredible.
the same tremendous capacity to heal.
Yes.
When we wake up, when we do this. So I say that, there are all these, I have a quote in my book, Carbon Yoga, from, I think, Captain Butler, who was in the military command. And I don't remember the exact quote, but he said, in effect, if I look at all the near nuclear misses that have happened, and he listed like 40 of them, it was either sheer dumb luck that we are still alive, or it's divine intervention. And he says, I'm inclined to believe the latter.
I hope it continues that way.
Exactly. Thank you, Jim.
If Willow will turn on her video, she is raising her real hand.
Okay.
And Willow, yeah, can you turn on your video or no? And if you don't want to, that's okay too. You're able to talk now, so.
We don't hear you well, Willow.
Struggling with the whole system. I will be off the video because
Yeah, can you
Okay.
type it in? Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you can hear him,
You're cutting in and out.
Okay, she was having trouble with so I think she's out now. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Nancy, for that reference.
Okay, I've messaged Willow to see if she wants to send me the question for you to ask. I don't see any other hands up. Whew. You've got Dr. Rao right here with you. Good time to ask. I guess I could ask something. I know it's something that that people will want to know when they look through this, because and it may just take some math study. I guess I'll put myself up there. I kind of don't want to, but and that is when you have 100% of a bucket of apples, and it's 100%, but then somebody out of left field brings you 60 more. Is that when you've got 160%, or not 60, but whatever the number is to be 160%? Because in your, you know, you've changed your number there from 87 to 118%.
118%, yeah.
And so, yeah.
There's a distinction between my 118% and what Jared Bishop showed yesterday as 160%. Jared Bishop was showing the cumulative impact of the animal agriculture industry has caused a warming or radiative forcing of 4.6 watts per square meter. Okay, that's how much cumulatively the animal agriculture has cost over the last 10,000 years. And the amount of heating that we are experiencing today is 2.8 watts per square meter. And that 4.6 watts is really 164% of 2.8 watts. So you ask, what happened to the other heating that the animal agriculture industry did? Well, nature cooled it. See, nature is a self-correcting system. So you're heating, nature says, okay, I'll put it away. It cools it. So nature is constantly trying to undo our damage. That's what a healing system does, self-healing system does, right? So the nature has sequestered some of our CO2 emissions in peat moss in the Arctic. We know that. And there is no reason to believe that peat moss will, you know, emit all that CO2 when we start cooling. It stays there. So nature has put it away for us. So it's like nature is waking us up, saying, now that you understand this, now that you have all these tools, you can now become this. Yeah. So we now know animal agriculture is causing cumulatively has caused 160% of the heating that we are experiencing today. Cumulatively. What my number is, 87%, is on an annual basis. The emissions on an annual basis is, in the paper, it was 87% of our annual emissions. And it's 118% with the update. And that's including opportunity cost. What that means is that if you shut down the animal agriculture industry, we are constantly increasing the heating on the planet by 0.1 watts per square meter, approximately. So from 2.8, it goes to 2.9 next year, and then 3.0 the year after, and so on. Roughly about 0.1 watts we're increasing. But if we didn't have animal agriculture, it won't go up from 2.8 to 2.9. It'll go from 2.8 to 2.76. It's 2.77, something like that. It'll come down, even though you're still flying around on planes and driving cars around. You're still burning the fossil fuels, right? Because animal agriculture had that huge opportunity cost that we're taking advantage of, with all that land being released back to nature. So we are harnessing nature to help us cool the climate, because nature is constantly trying to help us, and we are constantly saying, no, we don't want your help. We want to burn that. That's what we've been doing all along, because we want to raise more animals, So that's what that means. So we will start, it's not cooling. Instead of heating by 2.8 watts, you'll be heating by 2.76 watts and then 2.72 watts. It's going to come down slowly if we don't do anything about fossil fuels, but if you just focus on animal agriculture and getting rid of it. And then you can start bringing down the fossil fuels slowly over time, right? So that's how you would engineer a cooling modality. So that requires, us to reduce the overall demands on nature. You really don't need so much, because a lot of our demands now are wasteful. We're not even getting any benefit out of that demand. We're extracting stuff and using it and throwing it away because somebody wants to make money off of it.
Right, and somebody wants jobs, so then they make little plastic trinkets, and then they sell them to kids at school, and
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you about the paper then. So the paper that had what you did to multiply the heating per square mile.
Square meter.
Square meter. So have those numbers now changed due to more information?
Yeah. That's why I said those numbers have changed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I have to update everything in the paper because the paper is based on the 5th assessment report. And now I have to do everything for the 6th assessment report. Okay. But the numbers are looking better. That's all I'm saying. It's looking better.
Right.
Not worse.
It looks more like we can actually make a big difference.
Only
a bigger difference. Feet to go.
Yeah, this is why even though we hadn't done anything in the past 2 years, it still is okay. In the old model, if you don't do anything for 2 years, it gets worse and worse because the 5th assessment report numbers.
Right. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Alison, yeah, the opportunity cost was there in the 87% also, but the opportunity cost, I could increase the lower bound because of the updated numbers in the 6th assessment report. Previously, the lower bound was 34.5 gigatons of CO2. I think now it's something like 46 or something. So that's why the total goes from 87 to 118. Updated numbers from the 6th assessment report of the UN IPCC, which came out just end of last year. So in my analysis, I'm assuming that the data in the IPCC are correct. Okay. That no one's trying to lie to us about the data. It's just that the interpretation of the data, the conventions, the IPCC conventions have been massaged to make it look like animal agriculture is benign and fossil fuels are the leading cause. Okay. That's the assumption I'm making. Because it's really hard to go and get all these scientists to lie for you. No? It's much easier to do this tweaking. So I'm assuming that these are minimum energy deceivers. Yes, please come every Monday. We meet at 9:30 and 9:30 a.m. Pacific time and 6 p.m. Pacific time in Movement Monday. Same convergence room. So it's on the calendar. And we use that as a way to sort of continue this process, because what happens during the convergence is that we get input from so many people, and everyone takes input from everyone else, and everyone gets better at what they do, which is the intent of the convergence. So we are sort of, it's an acceleration process, the convergence. And so we are trying to continue that during the weekly meetings.
Oh, sorry about my typing.
Yeah.
Dr. Rao, since there's a bit of a lull here, I have a fundamental question that's not related directly to any of the data that you've presented today, but it's just been bothering me for a long time. Why is it that we need to continually cut down forests for growing food for animal agriculture? What happens to the land that has already been used for growing the food for the animals? Does that just is that gone forever, or
No.
what happens to it?
So what happens is every year the animals eat the grass, whatever they eat the vegetation. And whatever the animals did not eat is potentially going to become a forest again, right? If you let it grow. So people go and chop that and burn it. So and that becomes a fertilizer for the animal food. So those are called pasture maintenance fires. And this is how we maintain pastures and prevent them from becoming forests again. So that's one source of the fire that happens for animal agriculture. The other one is the pastures start giving you less and less every year. Because there's a desertification process that happens. So about 20 million acres of land are desertified every year. Okay.
So that's why we need to keep cutting down more.
So you need to replenish that. Yeah.
We don't have to, but that's why we do cut down so many more trees every year.
Right.
Okay.
You have to cut down more forests to get more land. And you also have, if the demand goes up, which is they claim the demand is going up, and therefore, and sort of a lot of this demand is artificially inflated also. Because if you can go get your friend in the government to give you a subsidy and buy up all your cheese, you just make more cheese.
Right. And then throw it away.
Then throw it away. They don't care what happens to it. You've got the money. See, animals are a way to take nature and turn it into cash. Because we have treated animals as commodities for converting nature into cash, right? Otherwise, who would buy the grass and pay for it? No one will buy the grass. So you have to convince people to buy the animal that ate the grass. Then the grass is now a source of money.
It's got to change.
Yeah. No. Once you understand it, you say, oh, what in the heck is this? I mean, when I tried to understand the system, I said, who the heck designed this system? It's such an awful system design. But I realized it's just by osmosis, and this organically grew into this this ball of
It
wax
wasn't
that we are
just one
facing today.
person, it was.
Yeah. Everybody's
Most
born
people.
into it and go along with it, and then they climb up and they figure out how to get to be at the top. And it's a game. It's a Monopoly game we're playing.
Okay, thank you.
I believe Bill Glover.
Bill Glover?
Yes. Yes.
I just wanted to say, I think the most important thing that I can learn today, maybe some others, is the consistency of the work you're doing. This is what we all have to do. It's the consistency. It's not the yesterday and not tomorrow. It's really important that it is consistent from now until the end time.
Thank you, Bill. That's one thing I was born with. I was gifted with it, persistence. I never quit.
I can
I
tell
don't know the word.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. And I have to thank my granddaughter. She gave me that.
No, I remember when she was at our school.
Yes, I know. You told me she's a force of nature, didn't you?
Right.
Oh, Shabari. Yeah, I would be happy to talk to your husband.
So Sailesh, at the next COP28, is the information you're getting that it's true that they're going to be serving primarily vegan food?
Well, they have said that they will serve. They said that over in Glasgow also. And Glasgow also, they said they would show, the CO2 emissions of each food item. Now, first of all, the CO2 emissions that they show are with the false accounting.
Yeah.
So take that into account. And secondly, they 55% of the menu items were vegan, the other 45 were meat-based. That was
Right.
COP26. And COP27, they went right back to almost 100% meat-based, I mean, hardly any vegan food. So it's like, do we have to ask for this over and over? I mean, shouldn't it be like, are they serious? That's my question. If they're serious, it'll be 100% vegan. If it's not 100% vegan, they're not serious about addressing climate change. And why would I want to waste my time talking to them? I mean, being there. The only reason I used to go was to meet the other people.
Yeah.
So, and COP26 to me was the last straw, because it was not only, they didn't talk about animal agriculture at all. It was full of these glitzy displays, and it's like a Times Square like thing going on with ticker tape on this, with the list of all the. Come on, are we addressing? And people come, the leaders come in SUVs, in a huge retinue of SUVs, and they go from place to place, and they block off all the roads to go there, and then they have dinner, and they're serving venison. I mean, what the heck?
Yeah.
Are these people serious about addressing climate change?
I noticed that President Lula in Brazil is setting up a COP here for Latin American countries. It'll be interesting because he has a unique perspective in regards to what's happening in the Amazon, and he knows about the production of beef, how it's destroying the Amazon, and he's putting the brakes on it. I don't know that he's turning it back, but he's putting the brakes on it. So
they're all stuck in the system, no? Well, unfortunately, yeah. So I have sympathy for them. They're stuck. So it's like, I remember reading this story of Brer Rabbit and the tar baby when I was a kid.
Tell us that story. I don't think I know.
Yeah.
This.
I vaguely remember this. The story is Brer Rabbit is walking by and he sees this tar baby and he says, "Good morning." And the tar baby doesn't reply to him. He says, "I told you good morning." And the tar baby still doesn't reply. Then he hits the tar baby with one hand. Says, "I said good morning. Didn't you hear me?" And his hand gets stuck. Then he hits it with the other hand. The other hand gets stuck. Then he hits it with his foot. And by the time he's done, he's all stuck to the tar baby. Right? All four limbs. And then he gets caught by the hunter or whatever, and something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, Brazil is stuck in a way, but I'm curious culturally because there's this thing that happens in Latin America where things break loose. There's resistance, and then there's a breakthrough. So when Bolsonaro was taken out and Lula came back in, there was resistance. They even tried to do a January 6th thing to take over I don't know if it's the White House or what it's called in Brasilia. But anyway, Lula is definitely stepping outside the bounds of what this system wants him to do. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, things like that could happen, but eventually this system, the only way it's going to end is it's going to collapse. It's going to disintegrate and collapse. Basically, it's a Ponzi scheme, right? Ponzi schemes always just collapse. People just lose confidence in it. And then they say, well, what do we do now? How else can we? So then will all the supply chains continue? We don't think so. So that's why we are building this app called Food Healers app that people can participate in a moneyless, transfer of food and help each other out, right? Yeah. So,
well, you're right in one way for sure, and that is that I think Lula is counting on carbon credits to be able to sustain his economy. So carbon credits, where do they come from? They come from the system. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, see, that's the story that's being told now, right? Who were the last to survive? No, excuse me. This is not about letting billions of animals go, letting billions of people go, and then figuring out how to survive. This is about turning it around. And so that bringing back the animals. This is why I love what Abhiram has done in Sadhana Forest, because he's literally saying, I'm here to serve the animals. And the animals population is increasing. And the animals know that the people are there to help them. So I mean, there's so many wild animals there, but only one person has been bitten by a snake in the last 20 years. And that was Abhiram. Because his wife told me, because he got careless, and he went there without a torchlight and started peeing on the tree, and the snake was in the tree. The snake came and bit him.
Yeah, he's not native to that area, right? He doesn't know.
No, he knows how to deal with it. It's just that, I guess he's been there for so long, he thought nothing would happen to him anymore. So.
Yeah. I like what Reverend Beth Love was saying earlier about creating her own sadhana forest. And we had a desire to bring sadhana forest to Peru, but that is a possibility, but that's a costly way to go. So I like Reverend Love's idea of doing our own sadhana forest.
Yeah.
Wherever we are.
I mean, you could buy like 100 acres of, land in a remote area and try to bring that up. Try to figure out how to bring the original forest back in that area, which is exactly what they did. They started with basically rocks, and a little bit of dirt. And the first thing they did was water retention structures, so that when the rain comes, you get a lake there. And from that, then everything else, all life flows.
Yeah. Mm.
But it needs to happen at scale. There are, lots of places it needs to happen. That's what I mean by at scale. So it's so I'm saying we'll be transitioning from an animal-based resource extraction economy to a plant-based ecosystem restoration economy, where the objective of human beings is to restore the ecosystems, is to clean up the plastic, is clean up the mess. So in preparation for the climate harmonizing phase, where we are maintaining the temperatures. Also, just one last story. I was when I first saw the temperature curves from the ice ages that Al Gore showed in his presentation in 2006. It reminded me of me sitting in a lab looking for two communication chips to connect and lock. and so that's exactly how the frequency of the two chips, they vary. They go up and down until they lock. And what's happening today, what's happening in this era is when the lock actually happens in the chip. So I said, hey, we are going to lock. So with that, thank you, Beth, for closing us. I'm going to spotlight you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Let's just all send each other some love for all the work we're doing. So, if you just want to do it with me, it's going to be a big kiss blown to everybody. So, and let's do that again. And yeah, thank you, everybody. I just really, really appreciate these convergences. I always learn a lot. I'm always pretty busy in the chat connecting with people, and really looking forward to going a little deeper with some of you who I will connect with between now and the next one. And I just want to encourage people, go on the Facebook page and pick out some of the sessions that were personally meaningful to you and share them on your personal page, on any groups you're part of that you think, even if I share with environmental groups. I didn't just share with vegan groups, with your own pages, your own groups, things like that. And just let's keep doing what we're doing, and trust and have faith that we are being guided. And if you're so willing, I'd invite you to join me in taking some deep breaths together, closing your eyes if you wish, and I will lead us in a closing prayer. So let's take a deep breath. Let's take another deep breath, and as we breathe in, we take in a vision of what is to be, and as we breathe out, we release any fear, worry, or concern. And as we breathe in, we again hold that vision sweet in our heart. And as we breathe out, we release fear, worry, concern. We show up this day grounded in the knowing that we live in a friendly universe that is always for us and never against us. And we know that when things feel good, they are here for our pleasure. When they don't feel so good, they are here for our learning and our growth. And so we show up in deep, deep gratitude for whatever comes. And we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are one with this great one with this friendly universe, and we have the power to co-create. And so we do not abdicate our responsibility as stewards of this beautiful earth that is so worthy of great stewardship. All of the religious traditions of the world have a teaching about how we are the stewards. We are the ones who have been placed here Not that the others haven't as well. I do not engage in speciesism, but all of us together, us, the animals of every species, the plants, we are all in this together. And together we are creating this beautiful, balanced, harmonious world. We are seeing these transgressed planetary boundaries where we have left the safe zone already, where we have left the just zone already. We are seeing them come back into alignment. We are seeing that beautiful donut put together by Kate Raworth, in which there's a sweet space that allows for the thriving of all life within the boundaries of our beautiful earth. And we are knowing that this is possible, and we are showing up each day energized, ready, available, accessible, open, and willing to be channels of divine intelligence, of divine clarity, of divine grace, of divine leadership, of divine guidance, everything. We know that everything that is necessary and beneficial for this to happen, for this to come about in a way that is a blessing to all concerned. And so we are grateful. We know that every single prayer is answered, that the big, beautiful, powerful, all-knowing God by any name has our back and is here for us right now and is always saying yes to every prayer request. And so we just say thank you, thank you, thank you, beloved. We get out of the way. We trust and know that this or something better now manifests. And so we simply let it go and let it be, knowing it is done. Thank you, beloved. And so it is.
So it is.
Amen.